Brooklyn got held up at work. She was running to the children's polyclinic to get another certificate. Nothing, my son will finally go to kindergarten and I'll feel better, she thought as she ran across the street at a flashing traffic light. One of the motorists started honking at her not to violate. Brooklyn did not pay attention. She was running late. Fortunately, the doctor admitted Brooklyn despite her tardiness. Is that it? No, come back tomorrow with your son. Why? It's a requirement. I've already made an exception for you. Don't hold up the line. I have an appointment. Brooklyn had to leave. She hated paperwork and didn't understand why it was so complicated. Looking at her watch, Brooklyn realized she couldn't walk home in time. She had to call a cab. Her mother-in-law, Paisley, was already hitting the phone. What took you so long? I have to go home and make my father some borscht. I'm coming, Paisley. Are you coming? Yes, I'm taking a cab. You're so rich. A cab? Your husband's working hard, and you're spending it all on crap, her mother-in-law mumbled, but Brooklyn didn't listen. She disconnected the call and thought she should run to the store. They were out of milk at home. She assumed her mother-in-law didn't go to the store. It was not part of her duties to do so. Brooklyn had recently gotten a job, not full-time, but only until lunchtime. From that moment on, her life became a nightmare. She couldn't get into a regular rhythm. She was late and couldn't concentrate on things. Paisley volunteered to help, but Brooklyn did not feel much help. Only resentment and reproach. Matthew did not want to sit with their grandmother, and she constantly complained that the child misbehaved. Scandal doesn't play on his own and constantly demands attention. He's spoiled, improperly brought up, said the mother-in-law. He listens to me, said Brooklyn. He should listen to everyone. And Uncle, little Matthew asked. No, of course not, son. Paisley, don't confuse the child. He should know not to approach strangers on the street. That's different, Paisley snorted. He's too young to understand. It's always like this. He should have listened to his elders. The mother-in-law rolled her eyes and defiantly started to go home. She had an unfed cat and a lonely husband. Brooklyn exhaled as the door closed behind Paisley. It was easier to breathe, but things didn't get any easier. Her mother-in-law was adamantly unwilling to take on any chores to relieve her daughter-in-law. She never cooked food for her grandson, never cleaned up scattered toys, and in general came only so that the child did not hurt himself in the absence of his parents. And so it was this time. Brooklyn walked into the kitchen and almost fell, slipping on the spilled water. Chips, said the son, pointing to a pile of wet paper lying off to the side. I see, Grandma made a C. Yes. Was it fun? Yes, Matthew laughed. Brooklyn picked up a rag and began to clean up after their swim. Matthew didn't particularly like it when Mom was busy, and she didn't get to cook a meal for herself. Brooklyn drank a glass of milk and went for a walk with her son. She wanted to make some important phone calls, but the baby wouldn't let her go, forcing her to mold sand cakes. Brooklyn? What a meeting! She heard a woman's voice. A couple was heading toward her and her son, a man and a lady with glasses. Brooklyn did not immediately remember that it was Elijah and Savannah, her husband's relatives, whom she had seen only once. At the wedding, Andrew, how big, grown up. Hello, Brooklyn said. His name is Matthew. Oh, that's right. It's a hard name to remember, Savannah laughed. Elijah stood aside. We're walking along and remembering you. What luck to have met you. Indeed. We were looking to buy an apartment here. Do you like living here? I like it. It's a nice neighborhood. Why don't you invite me to visit? Show us your place. Or are we just gonna stand outside? Matthew and I haven't been out yet. We're on a regimen, Brooklyn wondered. We're on a regimen. Eat and lie down, Elijah laughed. There's a cloud coming in. They said it was going to rain. You won't be able to go for a walk. You'll get wet and sick, said Savannah. As if on purpose, a few drops fell from the sky. And we don't even have an umbrella. And it's a 3-stop ride home. And I have to go to the bathroom, Elijah said. Mom, I have to pee too. Okay, let's go home. Brooklyn smiled, and they walked toward the entrance. Savannah said something about how their daughter was getting straight A's in school, about Elijah's new job, about expensive apartments and unprofitable mortgages. And Brooklyn was thinking about how she had nothing to treat her relatives. Where's the husband? At work. Gabriel's away on a business trip. Of course, to maintain a place like this, probably lives on business trips. I work too. How do you keep up with everything? Savannah raised her eyebrows. Barely. Doesn't your mother-in-law help? As much as she can. I see. Savannah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we'd have guests. There's only jam for tea. And rusks. Do you have any flour? Yes. I'm going to give you a recipe that'll blow your mind. Recipe for what? Pancakes, quick and easy. Get the bowl. 3 eggs. Brooklyn froze in place. The last thing she wanted to do at that moment was make pancakes. She should be getting something to eat herself as soon as possible. And here she was, standing at the stove with pancakes. Mama used to say, when guests came, you should be kind enough to set the table. She always had a bottle for such occasions. You know, the whole village used to visit her. I'm afraid Matthew won't let me make pancakes. Brooklyn interrupted her. I'll distract him. Boy, go to your aunt. The child looked doubtfully at Savannah. Go. Do you like pancakes? Mommy's going to make us a whole mountain of them. The child's eyes sparkled. He had been on a diet after an upset stomach when his dad had kindly fed him imported strawberries. Pancakes. I want pancakes, whimpered Matthew, tugging at his mom's dress. Brooklyn almost cried herself. Okay, she turned on a cartoon on her phone, noticing that Savannah wasn't going to play with him, and he could make a mess of things without attention. Elijah had gone to the TV, so she had to keep the child unscheduled and occupied with the phone. So you have 3 rooms? Isn't that a bit much? Matthew will need his room soon, and then maybe we'll have another. What do you need a second room for? You don't have time for anything. Not now, of course. In about 3 years. I don't know. Look, Brooklyn, here's the thing. Do you know why we want an apartment in your neighborhood? My husband's relative, Savannah, asked. Because Elijah got a job, and the office is right across the street. It's a good job, but it's a long drive. Well, move, there's plenty of houses. You don't have to get an apartment in a new building, Brooklyn replied. Come on, these old buildings. You walk in, and it smells like old times. No, we want to live in beauty. Well, it's up to you, Brooklyn shrugged. I hear you're going on vacation. Savannah kept up. No, we're not. I just got off work. Brooklyn turned on the mixer so she wouldn't have to listen to her. She didn't like this conversation. Why aren't you guys going anywhere at all? Savannah walked over to her, trying to block out the loud sound of the whipping dough. We will, toward the end of the summer. I don't know anything yet. I was going to offer you our cabin. Fresh air, garden. You can come. You can stay a month or a year. Brooklyn looked at Savannah with surprise. She hadn't expected such generosity from relatives she didn't know at all. We won't take any money. Thank you for the offer, but I'll have to check with my husband. Yeah. We'd be more comfortable if you left in early September. My eldest son is going to technical school. Savannah paused. We'll stay with you until we get an apartment. And Elijah will be close to work here, and my son won't have to travel so far. I don't think that's gonna work out. We're not renting, Brooklyn said dryly. Now she realized what the whole conversation had been about. Let Gabriel decide that. He's the head of the family. A spoonful of sugar fell out of Brooklyn's hands. It scattered on the floor, and Savannah had to go back to the table. Put more sugar in it. Add vanilla. I put in 2 packets because Elijah likes the smell of pancakes. Put it in, don't spare it. Savannah was dispensing advice while sitting on the couch, munching on dried fruit from a vase. They were bought especially for Brooklyn, Matthew's son, a diet food so he wouldn't get a tummy ache, and the guest ate them as if she'd never tasted anything like them in her life. Half an hour later, there were a few pancakes on the plate, but the vase of rusks was almost empty. Brooklyn didn't feel sorry for the dried goods. She just felt sorry for bringing Savannah home. But her upbringing didn't allow her to make her husband's relatives look scandalous. So she put the plate on the table and poured the tea. At last, your dried goods are indible. You seem to live richly, but you buy such. She didn't finish. Matthew saw that his favorite rusks had been eaten and roared. Don't feel bad, Andrew. They're yuck. Matthew. His name is Matthew. Here, pancakes. Here's tea. Eat up. Why don't you sit down with us? So much for hospitality. I'll take the baby away. He can't have pancakes. Mommy, I want a pancake. Matthew roared even harder. What do you mean, he can't have pancakes? We grew up on Grandma's pancakes, and he can't have one? What are you talking about? Elijah jumped in. Brooklyn had to give the child the most undercooked and diet pancake. Eat them or they'll get cold, Savannah said to Elijah. I can't eat with tea like that. What's wrong? Brooklyn asked without hiding her irritation. Is it not customary in your family to serve sugar with tea? Elijah frowned. Or is it a pity for the guests? Well, in the vase, that's sand. I need refined sugar. It's the only kind we have. We don't have any? What do you have over there? Elijah looked at the children's dishes. Baby colored sugar. She had to reach for the sugar she sometimes gave her son. All right, that'll do. I'll have 3 cubes and stir. Elijah folded his arms across his chest, waiting to be served. Brooklyn was shocked. She had heard from her mother-in-law that women in their family were accustomed to serving men, and Paisley herself sinned in this way. But Brooklyn and Gabriel had shared household chores. Her husband didn't ask her to stir the sugar in the cup. Isn't there any other jam? I don't like apple jam. We have a cellar full of it ourselves. I'll tell you what, dear guests, Matthew, it's bedtime, so finish what you've got and get on your way. The rain is over, it's time to call it a night, said Brooklyn, not knowing what to grab. Matthew reached for the jam and dropped a pancake, and Brooklyn stepped on it, almost falling. Savannah and Elijah looked at each other and finished their tea in silence. Good luck finding an apartment. Don't count on ours, Brooklyn said, hoping her relatives would buy a place farther away from them. Wow, Gabriel's unlucky wife. Savannah took Elijah's arm, and they walked out into the hallway. Brooklyn locked the door and heard Elijah's disgruntled voice coming from the entryway. What hospitality! What a nightmare! Her pancakes are ineatable, her child is crazy, and she's nervous. She didn't even put sugar in her tea. Don't tell me. She's got her crown on, princess. She's got red caviar in the fridge. You should have seen the way she was saving vanilla. Brooklyn wouldn't listen to anything else. She gathered the dishes into a pile and threw them in the sink. She needed to calm down and rest. Come on, Matthew. Quiet time. Luckily, the baby was tired from the day and fell asleep quickly. Brooklyn had a chance to get some sleep, but she didn't set her alarm clock and almost slept through work. She was awakened by a call from her mother-in-law. Paisley, what? You're not done yet? You're so sleepy. Why, did you have company? Yes, your in-laws. They already called me and said you're a slob, and that they were very unhappy with the reception. I'm sorry, Paisley, but I have to run. Brooklyn did not listen to her mother-in-law's dissatisfaction. She had her own opinion on the matter. She quickly packed up and left for work. Later, she called her husband, and he supported her. Don't think about them. You know my relatives are peculiar people. We haven't spoken in years, and nothing's gonna change. They'll talk, they'll forget. Then they'll come back to visit like nothing happened. Brooklyn listened to Gabriel's advice and stopped thinking about what had happened. Work time passed quickly. Brooklyn picked up her son from her mother-in-law and went with him to get new certificates. After sitting in line and exhausting her nerves, Brooklyn finally received the necessary documents and breathed a sigh of relief. Her mood improved, and she and Matthew went home. She was surprised to see Elijah in the driveway. What are you doing here? Did you come to see the apartment? No, I came to see you. I'm having lunch, so I thought I'd stop by. Lunch? It's a little late. I'm used to eating at 3 o'clock, so I thought I'd keep up the tradition. What's this got to do with us? What does it have to do with us? We're relatives. We don't have a canteen at work, and restaurants are expensive. So I figured since it's a coincidence, I'd eat at your place. Don't tell me you don't have anything to eat again. I don't. Not today, not tomorrow, never. Just dry goods. Even the vanilla's gone, Brooklyn said and closed the door in his face. Elijah paced the doorway for a while longer and left. That evening her mother-in-law called and told Brooklyn what she thought. Paisley, I respect you, but I don't intend to put up with all this. Then I won't come to see you anymore. Don't come. What do you mean? You're not coming without me. We'll be fine. Matthew has been accepted into kindergarten. You've been very helpful, but we don't need your services anymore. We'll see, snorted my mother-in-law. You call again. But Brooklyn didn't. She realized she had to keep her distance from such relatives. She and her husband hired a nanny, and later the child went to kindergarten. Savannah and Elijah Brooklyn never saw each other again, probably because they changed their minds about buying an apartment in the neighborhood. Paisley, on the other hand, realized she missed her grandson and came to visit. So how are you guys doing? We're great. Do you want dumplings? Gabriel asked. What are you doing eating that crap? She went into the fridge. Where's your wife? Why didn't she cook the food? I let her go for a walk. Are you crazy? There's no food at home, and your wife is out for a walk. It's outrageous. Gabriel grinned and went to the freezer for dumplings. He was the only one in their family who understood that a woman was not a servant and could afford to go out sometimes. So, should I boil them for you? Oh no, I don't eat that stuff. All right, son, I'll go, 'cause my dad's not feeding, and the cat misses him, said Paisley and went home. A hungry husband was waiting for her. He needed her because he couldn't even boil a kettle without her. But that's another story.